a couple tips in terms of leading people, specifically who have the genius of tenacity. And so just to refresh you, or to say for the first time, if you're not familiar with Patrick Lencioni's model, the 6 types of working genius, genius is really referring to that activity of work that we love doing, that we derive joy and energy from. And in that same model, there are 6 different activities, and we all have a genius in 2 of them. And so I'm going to talk about leading people who have the genius of tenacity, meaning they enjoy and derive great satisfaction from carrying things to the finish line, but not just for the sake of finishing, but so that we can finish according to the desired vision that we had and achieving the original outcomes that we set out to achieve. So they help us to stick to those standards. And people with this genius are absolutely incredible. And they are so valuable for our team because, as I said, they help us move from good work to great work. And they help us to close that gap and maybe move your organization from a 4-star review to a 5-star review. So let's briefly cover again what the genius of tenacity is. It is the final stage of work where we're completing tasks with this close attention, sticking to the standards that we set out to accomplish at the beginning point. And tenacity really can be that bridge between good and great service. And so one of the ways that those with the genius of tenacity, because again, thinking that of them from the perspective of people who find joy and energy from finishing things and finishing well, we are all going to be prone to making a conversation or working at something from our lens or our perspective. So those with the genius of tenacity may prematurely shift a conversation or a project and begin talking about how to get this across the finish line. They're talking about details, they're talking about execution and strategy, and all great. And these are things that need to be discussed and talked about. They're important. But what happens if it's done too soon is that we skip the discernment and the galvanizing activities. And so those 2, discernment and galvanizing, is what we call the activation phase. And when we do that, we assume a couple things. When we skip activation, is that we assume that the best decision has been made. That idea that we've latched onto and we're beginning to dream about how to execute and plan. We are assuming that that's the best decision. And so that ties into the element that we haven't fully discerned and given it the time to determine. And secondly, in connection with discernment, is we haven't given other people the opportunity for feedback, and maybe we're actually prematurely closing that conversation of discernment and assuming that there is no other feedback from anyone else on the team. And then thirdly is that we assume that the team is going to be naturally inspired by the doing, by the executing. And so again, this is remembering that people with this as a genius, they are energized and inspired by getting work done, but not everyone is going to be. And that's what this skipping activation does. It assumes that they don't need to be galvanized around a why or around anything else, that the activity itself should be motivation enough. The second thing to talk about is that those with the genius of tenacity can sometimes prioritize work over the relationships involved in the work. So they can forget to nurture the relationship because there's an overemphasis on the work. People with that genius of tenacity, they're very task oriented and can come across sometimes as insincere, insensitive to the people because they're really focused, which we need them to be, on helping us finish and achieve the results that we want to achieve. But in that process, again, they can sometimes prioritize work over the relationship. And so we don't want to miss the relationship piece because the work that we do is actually for the purpose of serving people. And so we always want to keep that in context. And so those are 2 applications or misapplications that sometimes the genius of tenacity can have, and things for you as a leader to be aware of when you lead people with a genius of tenacity.